What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I have a kind of different video for you guys where I'm going to talk about rulings. Now this isn't the usual topic on my channel, I've talked a bit about that before, but in the Netherlands we're going to have an extravagance on the 6th and 7th of February, so that will be in 2 weeks. Be sure to check out Cardguild's Facebook page for more info about that. And on this extravagance we will be playing with the new rules. Now, if you wonder what do these new rules mean, what is this, what are you talking about, Tatsym, are you stupid again? Hear me out. A long while ago, in America, they announced new rulings. There were 5 new rulings they were going to be adapting from the OCG. And they have been playing with these rulings for quite a while now. And as we all know, America has some different rulings than Europe. But they adapted these rules a really long time ago. Then they implemented them in their own extravagances. They implemented them in the remote invitationals where all the famous YouTubers except me played. And Europe didn't take those rulings over for some reason. We've been behind quite a while now, but this extravagance, this Dutch Benelux, it's Benelux, it's not, I keep calling it Dutch extravagance, will be playing with the new rules, which is why I will be making this video, so it's all clear and obvious for everyone. So America, of course, you have had these rulings for quite a while, so to all the Americans out there, I can make like 10,000 very bad jokes there, but I'm just gonna respect all of you and not do that. But yeah, you've been playing with these rules already, so yeah, don't click away yet, because there might still be stuff that you are not sure about, or you maybe haven't totally understood these rules at all, so that's why the video is here. And for all the Europeans, I hope that these rulings will come here quickly, and I hope that the difference between America and Europe ruling wise will finally be gone, because it's super weird and inconsistent. But yeah, personally I've been playing with these rules for a while now at locals, and there is almost no impact. Yeah, it just feels like the game always was meant to be played this way. So alright, to explain the rulings properly, I will be telling them as they are right now, as they are going to be counting from right now. So I will explain the new rulings, and then I will explain a little bit what's different for those that don't know. But what I will be saying at first will be the new rulings, to keep things as clear as possible. I will have nice shiny cards everywhere and things will be really nice. I will edit this insanely so that it's all very clear. Ruling number 1. Cards need to activate on the location where they should trigger. Now this sounds very difficult, but it is kind of obvious. For my first example, I will be using one of the meta decks right now, which is Drytron. Drytron all have effects where they tribute a ritual or a Drytron in order to summon themselves and do something. So all the Drytrons tribute Benton, which is a very famous card right now. So for the first example, Drytron tribute a Benton. This means that the Benton will activate in a new chain link as chain link number 1. So Benton's effect is, if this card is tributed, you can add 1 light fairy monster from your deck to your hand. This means that, again, it will activate as soon as the Drytron has resolved in a new chain link. So with the new rulings, or as it always probably should have been, a card needs to activate in the place where it should activate. This means that when Benton is tributed, it is in the graveyard and it needs to activate in the graveyard. This means that until the Drytron chain has resolved, Benton still hasn't triggered yet. And with the new rulings, Benton has to trigger in the place where it has to trigger, which means it is tributed from the hand, it is sent to the graveyard, which means that in the new chain, it has to activate in the graveyard. This means that until the Drytron is fully resolved, there is still an insane amount of things that can happen to the Benton before it finally has the chance to activate, and this is where the new ruling kicks in. This means that, for example, you can chain DD Crow to the Benton when it is tributed as a cost with the Drytron before it activates. This means that as soon as the Drytron resolves, DD Crow as well has resolved, and the Benton is banished. This means that in the new chain, Benton is no longer in the graveyard. It is no longer where it was sent to, where it was tributed to activate in the new chain. This means that Benton, since it's no longer in the graveyard, since it's no longer where it has to activate, it cannot activate. Doesn't mean that DD Crow negates it, but it means that the Benton just isn't at the place where it has to activate. Now there are more examples like this. For example, we're gonna use Dante. Dante, you make him with a Gruff, you detach the Gruff and you mill 3 cards for cost, which means that chain link 1 is Dante, and he mills 3 cards for cost. So in the grave you have for example, a graph and whatever and whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'll show it on the edit. This means that Dante is chaining 1, but the sphere has just been detached. He hasn't activated yet. He will activate in a new chain. This means that until the Dante has properly resolved and there are no responses from the opponent, a lot can happen to this graph, just as well as to this Benton. Graph's effect reads when this card is sent to the graveyard. You can special summon 1 Burning Abyss card from your deck. This means that just like Benton, he needs to be in the graveyard in order to activate, because he was sent to the graveyard. So this means that if you activate Dante, you detach for cost, you mill for cost, everything that is sent to the graveyard has to stay there until the chain resolves. So this means that if you DD Crow the graph, it will not activate because it is no longer in the graveyard. Now there are plenty other things. One quickly is of course Haquiro has roughly the same effect as a DD Crow. This means that if I activate Twin Twisters and I discard a graph to the graveyard, you chain Haquiro and you have a Lord on your field, you banish my graph, the graph will no longer activate since it's not there. But this new ruling is not only for effects that I have to activate in the graveyard, this also is in place for effects on the field. For example, it is your opponent's turn and you have just used Prankit's Pandemonium to fusion summon a fusion monster, and you activate 2 Prankits in the graveyard to summon 2 more Prankits. And on your field you have a Prankit's Plan, and the effect of Prankit's Plan is when you activate its effect you can make a link summon, which is quite nice to link summon in your opponent's turn. And for example, the moment that you have summoned the 2 Prankits, your opponent changed Torrential Tribute. This means that your entire field will go away. So at this point you opt to get the value, to get your bang out of your buck. You chain your Prankit's Plan to link summon into the Prankit's Bird. Cockadoo, I don't know its name. Its effect is when it is link summoned, you can add a Prankit spell. So let's look at the chain. You summon 2 Prankits, chaining 1 is Haquiro, or you summon 2 Prankits, chaining 1 is Torrential Tribute, and chaining 2 is Plan. So you link the 2 Prankits away to make the bird, and then Torrential resolves, destroying your entire field. This means that the bird is no longer on the field, so in the new chain link you are not able to search a spell or trap, because its effect is when this card is link summoned you can add a spell or trap, but it is no longer on the field. So although it is link summoned, although technically you didn't do anything with it, just like the Benton, just like the graph, it is no longer on the same place it has to activate, so you sadly do not get the search. And this is one of the most important rulings, and it's something that you just have to get used to. Just keep in mind that in order for a card to activate, it needs to be where it has to activate. And if you have any questions about this, be sure to ask them in the comment section down below. The other rulings are quite simple and don't require that much setup at all. The first one is cards that are shuffled back into the extra deck no longer activate. Back in the day, cards that are shuffled in the main deck do not resolve. For example, if a card says if this card leaves the field, you can, which means that if it is shuffled back into the deck, it doesn't resolve because cards in the deck cannot resolve. But the difference was that cards that were shuffled into the extra deck did resolve. But that no longer is the case. So the extra deck is just the same as the main deck. Cards that are shuffled back into the extra deck no longer can activate. So if they say leaves the field, back in the day they used to activate. Nowadays they cannot activate anymore. The other ruling are basically 2 rulings, and I'm gonna kind of mix them together. They are attempted summons no longer count towards restrictions. What this means is, for the first one, cards that used to say that you can only special summon this card once per turn, for example, a card like Blue Eyes Alternative White Dragon or Sky Striker Ace Kagari, are 2 cards that have the effect that they can only be special summoned once per turn. Back in the day, if you negated the summon of one of these monsters, you could not summon them again. You attempted their summon, it was negated, you attempted to special summon them. Nowadays, with the new rulings, this no longer applies. Attempted summons no longer count towards any restrictions, which means that if your first Sky Striker Ace Kagari would have been striked, you can just make another, just like Blue Eyes Alternative Dragon. And the other part of this same ruling basically, if you normal summon your Sky Striker Ray, you link it into Kagari, it gets striked. You haven't attempted to summon, that ruling or word or mechanic doesn't exist anymore, which means that you are 100% completely free to activate Card of the Mice or Pot of Duality or any card that says you cannot special summon the turn you activate this card, because the summon was negated, you haven't special summoned, you haven't done anything, this restriction still is offline. Now whatever doesn't work is, for example, if you activate Red Eyes Fusion, this also locks you into no longer doing stuff. But the difference is, if you activate Solemn Judgment on Red Eyes Fusion, you are free to do whatever you want. If your opponent activates Ash, you are no longer free to do whatever you want because it's the condition of the card. The card has to be negated, 100% completely negated, not the effect negation, no, the activation of the card has to be negated, in case you want that to happen. So for example, you activate Pot of Duality, it gets ashed, you cannot special summon for the rest of the turn. You activate Pot of Duality, it gets Judgment, you can special summon for the rest of this turn. However relevant that could be, it's probably not as impactful as the ruling that cards can be summoned again after they have been striked, which is insane. The last ruling that is new for us is trap monsters no longer take up a zone in the spell and trap zone. What used to be the case is, for example, with the popular cards Hakuo and Conquistador, it's really nice that this all buffs like modern decks. When you activate a continuous trap card that summons itself as a monster, it locks one of your back row zones. This means that for decks like Eldritch or any other deck, this really hinders your playstyle, because you both have a monster zone and a spell and trap zone in use, although there isn't really anything in your spell and trap zone. Which was quite inconvenient and quite difficult, and it was, for ruling wise, it was really harsh. So Konami threw that out of the way. Trap monsters no longer take up a zone in the spell and trap zone. This doesn't mean they are no longer spells and traps, because for example, Hakuo states that he is still a trap card. This card is still considered a trap card, which means that it can still be sent as Lord. Even if you have 5 set cards in your back row, you can still send your Hakuo from your monster zone because it is still considered a trap card. It just no longer takes up a zone. So back in the day, when you have a Hakuo, you can only set 4 cards because the zone that Hakuo was into is locked. You cannot activate anything until the Hakuo is gone. Nowadays you can just set 5 and have a Hakuo on the field, and there is no single problem. So yeah, the last 4 rulings were quite more easy than the first one. Be sure to ask any questions you have down below, and yeah, personally, I really think that these rulings are just all correct. It really helps. The DD Crow ruling is something that you kind of have to get used to. Just keep in mind that DD Crow doesn't negate, but you do have to look for the specific timing. Just realize that when a card is into the grave, it's a different card than when it is banished. So yeah, that's a little bit more advanced, and maybe you cannot fully utilize that, but I'm 100% sure that all the other rulings are something that will come in handy eventually, or that you can, beat your opponent with because they don't have the knowledge quite yet. But yeah, this is something that you kind of, have to accept mentally, that things are going to be quite different from now on. So yeah, did I learn you something today, or did you already know all these rulings? Be sure to let me know in the Be sure to let me down in the comment section, like you always do. Be sure to let me know in the comment section if you've learned something today. And yeah, you want to see more videos like this, or you have any questions, be sure to let me know and I'll answer them as best as I can. Certified judge here, let's go. Like, that's something to brag about. But yeah, good luck in the extravaganzas, and let me know how you did, and I will let you know my first place deck profile as soon as it's there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!